Bri, I'm so excited to meet with you. We've been working together since I believe 2020,
Mhm.
so 5 years, and I know we began coaching in 2021. You were one of my first three people when I was relaunching my practice, Pep Talk with Peps, for 4.5 years ago, which is crazy. So Bri, I would love if you could actually introduce who you are, what you do, what do you care about, and why do you do what you do?
Yeah. No, that's a great question, Peps. So just to know a little bit about me, like Peps said, my name is Brianna, but I typically go by Bri. I am a person of plenty of talents, but particularly I am a dancer and I do a lot of types of not only just dance, but also I'm really passionate about someone who is into different types of movement. And currently I am also working alongside Peps actually in his business builder program, currently working on constructing my business and something that I am passionate about, which is called authentic expressions. So I'm kind of between being a creative and as well as being an entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur. And then in terms of what I am passionate about, like I mentioned, um, a few years back, kind of right before I was working alongside with you, I was actually in the industry of behavioral healthcare. And I was like, okay, I have a passion for dancing and movement and just the arts. That's something that I used to do on and off. Here and there, but never really took it professionally. And that's plenty of things that we've also talked about. But in general, I've also was into mental health and well-being. And so as I've grown over the years, and perhaps you've gotten to see that growth over the years, I started to get more clear. The pandemic helped me a lot with getting clear. And so I found myself really wanting to merge the bridge between movement and movement being a wellness tool. And so that's kind of, things that I'm really passionate about now when it comes to using movement, not just me being a dancer, but when it comes to also using it for therapeutic tool. So,
And Bri, speaking of movement and therapy and therapeutic tools, if you don't mind sharing or to your level of comfort, when we first began working together, the coaching that we did then is completely different than what we're doing now. Could you talk more
absolutely.
about the beginning stages of that?
Oh my gosh, you guys. So, it's been a journey. And like Pep said, what I was originally receiving coaching from him originally is totally different now. And so, kind of back when I was doing a lot of coaching with Pep, started more so in 2021, like you mentioned, it was kind of just thinking about not only just getting to your next level, but uncovering what's kind of getting in the way of getting into my next level. So, one of the biggest things that perhaps you really helped me get clear on was one, I actually lacked a lot of clarity. So kind of
Mm.
like I mentioned, my journey has been this. It started with just needing to sit down and get clear on what I'm called to do, what am I even passionate about. Sometimes it does take those moments where you have to go back and say, well, what am I even passionate about, why am I even here? And so I'm like, okay, I'm passionate about this. I'm passionate about the arts. I love dancing. I've always said I wanted to go back into it, but I also love helping people. And I love, thinking about ways in which people can heal and etc. And so that was a big one is first getting clear on
Mm.
what it is I wanted to do. And also the second thing I would say is working on what's known as limiting beliefs. So things that were keeping beliefs that were keeping me from getting to my next level. So things like I felt like I wasn't good enough. I felt like I wasn't worthy. And so the third thing was, okay, well, how can we overcome these limiting beliefs and so that you actually can be in a position to receive more? And I think the final thing back then was a lot of using these limiting beliefs to also uncover some of my programs, especially when it came to things like money was a big one for me. So that revealed like my scarcity mindset around like, okay, I don't think I'm able to, or I don't think that I don't think that I deserve to receive, right? Or deserve to yeah, just have great things happen to me. And so I had to really get back to those roots, especially if I said, okay, I want to be wealthy or I want to be a millionaire. That was a big thing I used to say. And I was like, wow, Peps really helped me uncover these aspects. So, and then all the way to now, a lot of what we do is after kind of uncovering some of these limiting beliefs, you will also remind us that the work never stops.
Yeah.
So, kind of actually mentions a lot actually recently about how you always listen to personal development still. And so that's something that now I do, I make a part of my lifestyle. Right. And so I'm really intentional about how I feed my mind, how I feed my body, how I feed my soul, and also how I'm nourishing my spirit. So I look at kind of like all those different aspects when it comes to how I show up. Because I must pour into myself if I want to serve and continue to pour and grow into other people. And so how I look at that is, okay, I need to make sure, am I actually feeding my mind? Because some of these limiting beliefs for me, although I did uncover them, it still takes work.
Yeah.
It still takes work. It's so easy also to get like distracted as well in the world where there's like a lot of chaos. I mean,
Mhm.
it's so interesting because even when I'm like, okay, I'm doing my morning routine, I don't want to get on my phone. Eventually I still have to pick it up. And
Yep.
you easily just just scroll and like, wow, now you can get distracted by either phone, texts, emails, notifications, and what's going on basically in the news in the world. And so it's very easy to kind of get clouded. And so I'm like, okay, I need to have a set of routines and things that I am making sure that I'm renewing myself in different aspects. So
Yeah. One thing that you mentioned is, in a different way that you mentioned it, is the consistency of just doing the work. Uh, and one of the things that I remember that I had you do was the lipstick challenge. I just remembered the
you
lipstick
always,
challenge.
you always bring that up. I love it.
Um, and it's interesting because the lipstick challenge, it was really also to build up your confidence in a different way.
Mhm.
Um, And if you could share more about your confidence, but for people who are tuning in, it's like the lipstick challenge was and is still, it's something that I have people do. Is if you're somebody that wears lipstick, I'm not that person, but if you're somebody that wears lipstick, um, or would wear lipstick, is doing a version of a lipstick that would make you feel bold, and stand
Yes.
out. Because back then, one of the things that we were working through is your comfort level with being seen, and that
Yep.
has a lot to do with like your worthiness.
Yep.
And at the time, there was a lot of stuff happening with you emotionally that
Yep.
was really intermingled with all of those things. If
Yep.
you don't mind, could you talk more about like what that period of your life looked like?
Mhm.
Uh, what were some of the things that you would find yourself like questioning and struggling with? And
Mhm.
then outside of the lipstick challenge, like what were the things that like we did and that you did inside and outside of the program that helped you actually get through that?
Yeah, no, that's such a great question. So I'm going to address it in different ways. So I'm going to start with the lipstick challenge and what it kind of like really meant. And then I'll talk a little bit more about confidence in that period and time period that I was in. And so with that lipstick challenge, actually, I remember us talking about it. And you said, like you mentioned, make sure you pick a lipstick that's more bold.
I know where you're going with this.
And so I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe like just stand out." And it doesn't mean that it was necessarily wrong. Like you didn't say, "Hey, there's a wrong or right answer." It's just what's more so at this time now I've processed of like what's most aligned to being bold and what does that look like for me. And so the biggest thing that I realized, and I didn't at that time until you let me know was I picked this like was it like this peachy cream orangey whatever color and it was like no, you're still playing it safe. Like this is something that's still playing it safe because I remember I was like, I think in that time I remember myself saying, okay, he said bold, but I don't really want to go all the way out there. Let me just pick something in between. And I'm like, I didn't realize the biggest thing is I was playing it safe. That was not bold. And so even in that exercise, which was intentional by you, to show me how I was showing up. And so that kind of does translate in the period that I was at. Like Peps mentioned, around that time period, I was experiencing very, very dark times when just a lot of things that I've kind of experienced difficulties with kind of trace all the way back to childhood. So not even things as like a young adult, just trying to navigate, life after the pandemic and graduate school, and then also being unclear with what I wanted to really do. I just had a lot of things that came up for me, and I was like, how do I even deal with this emotionally? And so a lot of things that came up during that time, especially, was issues with confidence
Mhm.
and lack of wanting to be seen. And it really went back to that worthiness. The root really was when I was a child, I didn't feel worthy of love. I dealt with, like I said, not feeling worthy of love, but also not feeling good enough. And so there's time periods when I realized I had a moment to shine and I kind of shrunk, or I'm like, I didn't know how to receive, that love and celebration, etc. And so a lot of that was coming up for me while I was also battling with things mentally, right? And so dealing with not only just the fear of being seen, but also just feeling like not confident in myself. Another big thing that I struggled with was my identity, knowing who I am, right? And that can be like a whole nother spiritual conversation. But a big thing I dealt with was just not feeling secured in who I am. And a big question that I, asked myself, especially like you mentioned, what questions did you ask yourself? What was going through your head was, who am I?
Yeah.
Here I am. I felt like I went to almost like towards the kind of pinnacle of one of my careers was which was in academia, and like now going into mental health, saying, okay, now I'm getting trained as a licensed professional therapist. I can, transition into starting my private practice. And I felt empty at the same time. And so it's like, how is someone, finishing up her master's, got all these accolades and titles, which I did back then, but she feels now empty. And so that was kind of that period where it was just like I was dealing with so many things left to right. My confidence, who am I? I have success, but am I really successful? And so it was all these questions, literally me feeling like the breeze here, and I feel like I'm being pulled left and right. It's just like, who am I? And so I dealt with a lot of starting to experience periods of depression, and it went from just like kind of the mild cases to ended up almost being very severe, where I started to experience things like suicidal thoughts of just basically not wanting to be here. And it was interesting, I'll say that word, because these thoughts of not wanting to be here came from multiple things, but a big part of it was the root of not feeling worthy. And
Yeah.
so I also felt like I was, if I'm not worthy, as a person, you know what? Maybe, no one would care if I would be here. And that was far from the truth back then, and it still is now.
Yeah.
And so it's all these things that we don't even realize, one, what is the root of what we're going through, but also, a big thing is I didn't also lean in for help
Yeah.
until thankfully, you're definitely one of the top people in my life that was like, I care enough about you to know that, hey, something is wrong. I'm here to help you. And so it was actually opening myself up during that dark period and saying, okay, I'm going to allow someone to actually help me. I don't have to be the strong one always. Because that was
Yeah.
also, like I said, there's a lot of things that was unrooting, and, things that I pulled up that was pulling up. And that was another thing of not allowing myself to receive help. I was always serving, 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 giving, 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 but I didn't feel worthy to receive. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that was kind of a brief synopsis, I guess, of the period that I was at. So.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned this because two things are coming to mind. Uh One, I remember that period so vividly. And I don't
Mhm.
think I don't know if I've shared this with you. Um, but one of the reasons I felt really, I'm going to use the word empowered to support you and coach you through that period, is because I remember I went through my period when I was going through depression. I had suicidal ideation. Um, and I remember. I I think my period was in 2011. I know I'm older
Mhm.
than you by a little bit.
Yes.
Um, Not by much, but by a little bit.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
but in 2011, I had just graduated college. I had finished early, and it's like I graduated, with honors. I had already had a job through college, working in human resources, and I was making money. And then I remember just like graduating, like really anxious and depressed, and having suicidal
Mhm,
ideation. And I remember my mom sent me to the Dominican Republic. Um,
mhm.
for those of you that are not aware of Dominican moms, like Dominican
Actually, yes.
moms are
Yes, because I
moms.
come kind of from that Spanish side,
Yeah.
half Puerto Rican, but so yes, somewhat
Yes.
yes. Yes.
Um, they're like, if America's not figuring it out, we're gonna send you to the islands and figure it out over there.
Yeah.
Having a lot of issues with my body. Like I had a lot of
Mhm,
pain, I had a lot of health issues that doctors couldn't figure out. They were saying it's this and that. And
mhm,
the doctors there, I don't know if it's something that was just like by the grace of God or if it was just like what's required over there. I think it's part of a requirement for the doctors to have some psychological basis. So they have to have some
mhm,
psychology basis of understanding and dealing
mhm,
with patients.
mhm,
Um, and they had all at the time were working for my godfather, who was in charge of one of the biggest hospitals in the yard. So like they provided him a report with everything, so on and so forth. And then the report was basically like he might benefit from seeing like a therapist. Uh,
mhm,
and I remember I went to the meeting with the therapist, and she was like, "Well, I think you have depression and anxiety." And
mhm,
she was like, "Here's a prescription for depression. Here's a prescription for anxiety, and then here's a prescription for the side effects of both
mhm,
medications." And I remember leaving the room, and I'm sitting in the waiting room, and these two older women who I've never met before, and again, this is in Dominican Republic,
mhm,
um, and literally it was God there. They like asked me like, whether I look so like down or defeated or whatever.
mhm.
And what I'm going to share is not a substitute for medical treatment or advice, or it's not
Right.
for anybody watching this. But they said, you could take the medication, um, and hopefully it works. And then she said, or you could not take the medication and see what you could do. And she was like, but regardless, you're gonna have to do work to change whatever is happening internally. Like
Mhm.
whether or not you take the medication, like it doesn't change the fact like there's something inside of you
Right.
that is contributing to this feeling, this experience. It didn't say it like with all of these words, um,
Right.
but she was like, you would still have to do something. She was like, even if medication is what you choose to do, medication can come with side effects. And it also doesn't mean medication or that specific cocktail of medications is what's going to work for you, right?
Right.
So whenever people are dealing with a chemical imbalance and they
Yeah.
take medication, not every cocktail is the right cocktail. So they have to find a
Right.
different way of treating that symptom, those treating those issues with a different set of ingredients,
Yeah.
of prescriptions. So I remember hearing this and I was like, well, I was like, if I didn't feel this way because of medication or something, and then I was like, well, let me try without it. I was like, let me try it without it, see what happens. And again, I'm not encouraging anybody to like get off medication or not listen. I'm not encouraging anybody to do that. And I remember I flew back to New York, and I ended up meeting my first coach, Anne Marie. And she's an amazing body work, heller work practitioner. So she's all about the mind body connection. And I remember it was her who helped me like really figure out how to feel better, like what was happening, what was I thinking about, you know. She gave me tools and practices and strategies. And I remember at the time I couldn't afford her. Like I could not afford her at all.
Real.
And I was like, and she was way like it was expensive then because I was like 2011, 2012.
Okay.
And I know
Got
coaching
it.
has become more pricey.
Right.
And rightfully so. I think one of the things that isn't talked about with coaching often is coaching is somewhat of a luxury, but it's also like a necessity.
Right.
No. So I say it's somewhat of a luxury because there's nothing that we really need from any like service provider to like physically live. Like coaching is not gonna feed me. It's not going to give me the water that I need to live. It's
Right. The basic need.
it's not gonna give me the basic needs. Not therapy, not a personal trainer. Like there's no service or anything that we have in this world that it's like a necessity, for
Right.
most people, right? For most
Right.
people, right? But where I say it's a necessity is because one of the questions that I'm being asked by one of my coaches, his name is Cortland, is you don't need him. I remember him saying, like, you don't need a program or a coach. He was like, but if you're living limitedly and unhappily, why would you want to? You know? And that always stuck with me because when I couldn't afford this coach in Marine, that was my first ever coach. And we had like a really long intake process. I'm
Hmm.
like, this is what I need. I'm like, this is what I want, you know. And it took me maybe like a year to get through the process of being depressed, having suicidal ideation, and then having had habituated all of those things. Because one
Right.
of the things that I've learned through my studies as a coach is we are creatures of habit. And
Yeah.
since childhood, we habituate
Yeah.
actions, ways of thinking, beliefs that run our lives. Like most of our thoughts are
Yep.
subconscious. So I remember it took me a year to start really feeling like normal. Know
Hmm.
that, oh, I'm actually not a depressed person. And that's
Hmm.
the rest of the way I'm gonna live my life,
Right.
I'm not that person. And I
Yeah.
remember that really inspired me to like create my programs, specifically like at your next level, based on
Hmm.
identity shifts, like shifting our identities, like what is our
Yeah.
identity rooted in. And then if we want to create a new identity, it's like, well, what do we have to do to do so? Like, what do we have
Yeah.
to do so? Who do we have to learn from? Where do we have to go? And I'm so thankful. And I was having this conversation earlier with a friend
Hmm.
that God has given me the desire to want more and to be better. And I don't mean
Yeah.
like more things for the sake of
Right.
more things, but like even just having more money so I can help out more people, you know?
Yeah.
Even just being a better person so I can be a good person to like my mom or to my
Right.
siblings or to my clients or to my friends or to people that I'm with. Like God has
Yeah.
me like that gift of like always just wanting that desire to be more and to be better. So Bree, two questions for you because I know we shared
Yeah.
similarities. It's one, do you feel, because I always have this idea that
Hmm.
we don't change because we're asked to change, right? So we don't change because somebody's asking us to change. We may think that's why we're changing.
Right.
For you in specific, do you like what was it in you that allowed you to choose? Let me actually get coached by somebody at the time who you barely knew, right?
Right.
And then two, what was your process of finding a way to invest in yourself when you're like, I don't even have money to do anything that I want,
Right.
let alone pay for something that's priced like a luxury.
Right. Yes. So I will address it by answering your first one first. So the biggest thing, like you mentioned, for me specifically, sometimes we don't actually change until we reach our breaking point, or until sometimes we are sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Mhm.
And sometimes, even me, sometimes I thought I reached a point where I'm sick and tired of saying, I want this, but this is not where the actual outcome is. And so I would say, I want to change, biggest things like, oh, I want to, release weight, like lose weight. Oh, I want to receive more money. Oh, I want love, but my daily actions and my beliefs did not reflect that. And so I'm thinking, okay, no, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of, let me, I did what's called quick fixes, whether I'm like, especially during the pandemic, I'm like, let me just go on this live to feel motivated. And we already know when it comes to motivation, that can die down. And
Yeah.
so I did a lot of external things
Um,
because there's some people that are like, yeah, okay, I know I need just like a little help. Maybe I just need some motivation. No, I started to be open in knowing that I needed to be coached and also go back to therapy when I reached my breaking point, which was suicidal thoughts. And right even before that, I reached my breaking point. I had plenty of moments to say, hey, you know what? Before things get worse, because I was still on and off with experiencing depression. And yeah, I still had anxiety and et cetera. But when I started to realize, okay, this is what's coming up for me, maybe this is a lot that, I can't contain by myself. I probably need, coaching and etc. But I'm like going kind of into your second question, bleeding into that. I was like, but I don't really want to invest. Like, I don't want to like, yeah, I had still a lot of money programs at that time where I was just like, this is, I knew I needed better, and even though I wasn't super clear on what that looked like, I knew I needed better, but it was still my programs holding me back on actually moving, choosing better quick enough, right?
yeah.
Quicker than I did. Because my programs was like, I have to work hard for my money. And
Yeah.
so right around when I was transitioning into actually going back into receiving help, and stopping everything that I needed to actually receive that help because I reached my breaking point, I relied on quick fixes. So I was like, okay, YouTube, okay, this little program, okay, but I felt like I had to work really hard for my money. And so, especially when this was like around the pandemic, I was definitely anxious because I didn't know what was going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
And especially the industry that I was in, behavioral health, we were losing a lot of, jobs at the time. There was practices closing down, or we were transitioning into what's called telehealth therapy, which is more,
Yeah.
popular or more familiar now. But back then, it wasn't as familiar, to people, and so there was a lot of transitions happening, especially, of course, and during a pandemic, right? And so I was definitely like, I need to hold on tight to all of what I worked hard for. And this didn't even have to technically relate into the pandemic. I still had these thoughts, and I got trained and conditioned this way while growing up. So
Yeah.
this could even be pre-pandemic. I would still have these thoughts of, well, I work really hard for my money. I need to hold on to it
Yeah.
all. And then also working with strangers. Like I'm like, I need to, I struggle, experienced a lot of difficulties with trust, right?
Hmm.
Who to trust because I felt like I grew up, believing that certain people were a scam or, you know, um,
I
money
get.
doesn't grow on trees, all these different beliefs, that, especially with me growing up, I held. But when I reached that breaking point, I said, for me to wanna do better, like you mentioned, you feel like God called you to be better, not just to, "Okay, I just wanna receive more money to hold on to it and do whatever I want with it." No, but to actually be better so that you can actually serve better, you can show up for other people better. That's what was kinda happening. I'm like, "Here I am serving, but I'm also doing a disservice by not getting the help I need." And so it was so painful that I was like, you have 2 choices. You have to either get up and do what's uncomfortable by actually getting the help, or you can actually do the opposite and not receive help and be in the same cycle. And
Over.
when you actually go through almost what it seems like you're on the edge, where you're like very close to, oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to actually decide to take my life. I did not want to put anyone else in danger, um, as well as myself. And so at that point, I was like, to better service my clients, I need to stop and get help. But the
Yeah.
biggest thing for me, that I like teaching people is you don't have to wait until it is a breaking point because you don't know what that's going to look like and you don't know when. You also don't know when's your last day. right
Yeah.
here on earth. And it can get really deep because, for me, that's kind of how it was. And so I had a choice to say, am I gonna continue the way I'm going? Because there's only but so much left. If
Yeah.
I don't get the help, I might snap on someone, and I don't want to do that, whether that is on someone else or myself. And so I actually said, no, I need to go. I need to stop everything. Let me transition out of my contract, close out, do whatever thing and anything that I had to do with my clients. I also had to reach out to a lot of my supervisors, as well as my instructors for graduate school. And then also the contracts, maybe when I did freelance work during that time, I just had to let them know, not all the details, but just generally, hey, this is a sign from that I'm just reaching out to get additional assistance for what I'm going through. And it was very hard. It was
Yeah.
very, very hard because another thing too is my family, it wasn't normal to talk about these things. And so that what that support looked like too, it's not that they didn't support me, is that they didn't know how to.
Yeah.
Because this is something that was new at the time to them, especially at this level. And then into your second question, we're into that in terms of investing in myself. Like I mentioned, I knew I needed help. And
Yeah.
so that's when I rolled myself back into therapy. And that's when I also opened myself up into saying, okay, although I'm working on my beliefs, because when I made the choice to actually invest into your program as well as continuing to um, just grow, really unplug and really just start to go there, go to the roots of, why is this happening? What's showing up for me? And what does my future look like? I realized that I'm like, okay, even though I don't know fully these people or I don't know what's going to happen, I need to make that choice to say yes
Yeah.
because someone's on the other side of my yes. And so the reason why I decided to invest truly was if I don't, who does not get to be helped as well? What I'm going through can really, if I truly see it through and I really open up and get the help that I needed, especially at that time, who's going to be impacted by me just continuing to press on? And so I related a lot to pain, turning that pain into purpose. But I knew I wasn't going to be able to do that without the help and without investing into myself. So for me, it went really that deep because it's like there's a lot of things that's on the line, but I didn't necessarily grow up believing these things. I just really just held on to money doesn't grow on trees and,
Yeah.
really don't engage with people, especially money wise back then, with people that you don't know. You
Yeah.
don't know them, they can scam you, etc. And so I had to put what I thought I knew and what I really didn't know to the side.
Yeah.
And that wasn't easy. So I just took it step at a time. Okay. I'm a bit familiar with, PAPS at the time. I said, you know what? Let me just see what happens.
Yeah.
And you guys, I never looked back, literally.
What's really interesting, two things are showing up for me as you're speaking.
Hmm.
Um, One, it's almost like you had a similar but slightly different response to our shared experiences of depression, suicidal ideation.
Hmm.
Um, because I remember the only reason I chose to like do the work, like if I was really to like pinpoint it back,
Hmm.
it's because I remember I was talking to my mom.
Hmm.
I remember it was like December 2010. I
Hmm.
finished like my last few classes um in undergrad at NYU. And I remember just asking her like, what would happen if I just like died? And I thought I was like casual
Hmm.
about it. I
Yep.
think we for any I don't know if this is everybody's experience, but for me, like I was trying to like be casual about sharing
Hmm.
my thought about
Yeah.
it. Um and my mom instantly said, "You're coming home." She was like,
Hmm.
and my mom is not one to be played with.
Neither
Even
is
as an
mine,
adult,
literally.
even as an adult now, she is not somebody to be played with.
Mhm.
So I share that because in hearing you speak, I'm really, I want to give you your credit for like you having your own
Thank
internal
you.
compass to actually choose, like to find
Yes.
something differently. Whereas my mom was like the person that I spoke to, and I don't even remember like why I would even speak to her about it. That I was like,
Mm.
"You're coming home, you know."
Yeah.
Um, so I say all that to say it's there's no there's no valid reason to let it get worse.
Right.
Like there's no valid reason to like let it get worse. And a lot of the time, in my experience, and this is what I've shared in coaching with you guys specifically like business builder, is a lot of
Mm.
times like we wait till there's like a dumpster fire and like our back is up against the wall to take action.
Yep.
But there's no valid reason to like let it get worse, you know?
Yep.
And one of the things that you touched on is if we're letting it get worse, the question isn't just like, why are we letting it get worse? It's also like, well, when are we going to do something about it? You know?
Mhm.
And in doing something about it, there's always a cost. And I don't just mean financially,
Yes.
but there's an energetic cost, there's a time cost, there's obviously the financial cost. Then
Yep.
there's what I call like kind of like the casualties of growth, where it's like
Yeah.
as you change, the people around you, those relationship dynamics may change for the better, may change for the worse. Some people
Yeah.
might fall off. Careers will have to change when you're realizing I'm actually this career because I am getting paid, but I hate it. And
Yeah.
that becomes a different type of pain. So part of what happens, it's also in this growth, is like there's so many things that need to happen and that do happen in the process of changing. So Bree, to start closing this out, what would you tell somebody who they're saying like, I want to invest in myself, but I don't have the money, I don't have the time, you know? And it's something that we've talked about over the years at different,
Mhm.
and it's something that has a variety of iterations. And it's
It
like
does. Yeah.
the more that we grow, the more ingenious we get with our excuses and our justifications.
Yep.
And
Yep.
we find different ways of like justifying to ourselves, like, why not this, you know?
Yeah.
And one that's coming to mind recently is I remember, I think last year you were like, I don't know about business builder. And then I was like, it's only a matter of time. I was like, I
Yep.
already knew it's a matter of time.
Yes.
And then you ended up hiring me this year for like one-on-one
Oh.
for
Yep.
4 weeks, business builder, and then
Yep.
the VIP day. So
Yes.
last
All
year I
helpful.
was kind of like figuring out like what was happening. And
Yep.
then this year you were like, okay, I'm doing all of this, right? And all of those things came at a cost. Like, what would you tell somebody who is saying like they want XYZ, but they're hung up on the price, they're hung up on their current reality, they're hung up on the fact that they have very little energy, and they're saying that they still want these things. And here comes this program, whether it's mine or somebody else's, that could cost them anywhere between like 5,000 and 10,000 in total.
Yeah.
What would you tell them?
Yeah. So many things are running through my mind. Um, One of the first things, though, that I will say is powerful, especially when trying to make a decision, is one, deciding.
Hmm.
You have to decide that you want to get better. And that's going to take doing things that are outside of your comfort zone because all of what you've been doing up to this point has it gotten you to where you need to be or where you say that you want to be? If not, then you have to decide differently. But you have to even decide because many people say that they want to be better, they want to do this, but I don't have the money for it. I don't. But once you decide, I'm telling you, the universe or whoever you believe in, my higher power is God, but the universe, God, whoever will move in your favor,
Yep.
especially if that is it's direct in alignment of what your path is and where you need to go. It will move in your favor. And that's where we talk about the aspect of faith. or just having that, like, just evidence of something that is not technically seen in the physical, but having that faith that it is going to work out once I decide.
Yeah.
And so that is a big thing because, again, people feel like, okay, I want to do better, but they haven't really actually decided. And
Yep.
that decision is just even making a shift mentally saying, I'm going to do this. I don't know how, but I'm going to do this. And so a lot of people, they don't take uncomfortable action because that they don't know, or they feel like they're not going to have control of what is actually going to happen. And
Yeah.
so I would say decide. And after that decision, move forward. So what does those steps look like? So for example, they may not actually physically have the five or $10,000 in their bank account, or maybe they might, but they might be saving it for whatever else, depending on their actual situation. But once you make that clear decision mentally saying, I'm going to commit to this, then have that step of action saying, what can I do to then be in position where I can invest into this program? Right.
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest thing that I would say. But another thing that I'm going to leave off here is, when will you? When is the right time? Time is something that we don't get back.
Mhm.
And so that was the biggest thing for me is I got clear that this year, and I strongly called to say, hey, you need to start your business. You need to start. It is time for you to, even right before the year begun. I
Yeah.
remember back in that time when you said, he introduced me to Business Builder, but I was like, I don't feel like it's the right time. And it was more so getting clear on what it is that I wanted to focus on. And once I got that call to say, just feel like spiritually I got a strong call to say, no, you need to start this business. You need to
Mhm.
start the page. You just need to start.
Yeah.
Right before the year started, I said, wow. And that's when you came back around. But it started with me making that clear decision saying, yes, I'm going to commit to it. I'm going to commit to this business. I immediately changed my other additional Instagram. Now it's Authentic Expressions. And I was like, okay, I'm clear. But I was like, how am I going to? And I was like, technically, the funds will come. Um, and I also was like, okay, I need to prioritize. Yep. I was like, because I was like, a lot of times I mentioned to you, hey, I just need to prioritize my financing. And usually that really what was the case, where I was like, but I have this for my bills and I have this for this investment. I already committed to this. And, I was like, but when will I do it? Like, what, by me prolonging the time, what else does that will cost me? Who
Yeah.
else? What if I actually commit to this? And then by the time I committed to this, the person that needs to receive what it is that is being birthed inside me can actually receive that. But if I delay my timing when I'm going to say I'm going to do this thing, who will that affect?
Yep.
And so again, it's a really deep thing, but I really encourage, if you're someone that is like, I have this and that, and or I don't feel like I have the money, find a way. If you feel like you're called to actually, do business builder or work with Peps in any form, shape, or fashion, and just called to be better, then decide, okay, yes, I will, and what that will be, whether that is specifically your program Business Builder. Then it's like, okay, then find the way.
Yeah.
Don't let any excuses get in the way.
Yeah.
So
Or
that's
even
what I wanted
if
to share with
somebody
that.
else's completely different program or business. Because I'm also very
Yeah.
clear that I'm a very demanding coach. Like I'm a very demanding coach. I like to have fun, but I'm
Yeah.
very much
Listen, you get us together.
let's get let's get it done, right? Let's get it done.
Yep.
And one of the reasons, and you know this from Get to Your Next Level because you've done that a few times, and it's in the module peace and urgency.
Hmm.
I talk about like losing my grandfather, and
Yeah.
the process of me taking care of my grandfather, I took care of him for 6 years as power of attorney. Is
Hmm.
when he passed, and I remember like when he passed, I was very sad, and I didn't feel like I needed more time with him.
Hmm.
And but I knew a lot of his kids, like his actual children, felt that I
Yeah.
wanted more time with him. So one of
Yes.
the things that I am so clear on when it comes to like working with you guys and working on myself, and when I catch myself, because also nobody's perfect, when I catch myself
Right.
not 100, or when I'm catching my own excuses,
Mhm.
or self-sabotaging, it's tomorrow's actually guaranteed, but we're not, right?
Yeah.
Like really living with that urgency that we are not guaranteed
Right.
here tomorrow. Like
Right.
tomorrow's gonna be here, whether we wake up or not, so on
Yep.
and so forth, but we're not. So one of
Yep.
the reasons I'm always like, well, when is it gonna be the right time? When are you gonna have more time? Especially
Right.
as we get older. When are you gonna have more time?
Listen, the years are counting down,
They're
okay?
going, and everything that we experience in life, specifically when it comes to money, is most people don't have the money that they want, usually because it's a lack of skill, lack of strategy, lack of mindset. Even myself included, it's like the reason that I'm
Yep.
like I'm multi seven figures just yet is because I don't have
Mhm.
the skills, the strategy, the mindset just yet, and I haven't undergone the process that matches that journey,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So, but that doesn't negate the fact that if I had better skill, if I had more information, right, I would have it already. That's
Right.
I can support people building up like their six-figure businesses now because I'm like, oh, I've done that. I've done it in HR,
Yeah.
I've done it through entrepreneurism, right? So it's like, well, if it's not the right time now, then when is it going to be? Because the reality,
Yeah.
there's always going to be something.
Yeah.
There's always going to be something that is going to pull us or move us around or distract us. And as you said, it's deciding, and decision can only happen after vision.
Yep.
Decision can only happen
Yep.
after vision. And once you have that vision, like you did, you're like, okay, I
Yep.
received the vision and the conviction to launch
Yep.
this business, to create this business. Now I have to decide either I do it or I don't do it. But there's
Yep.
really no in between. Like, there's really no.
Yeah.
Brie, I'm so proud of
Mhm.
you. I am so proud
Thank
of you.
you.
I mean, just the person that you are today. And it's not even surprising that you're this person because you were always this person, even when
Mm.
you were
I
going through
appreciate it.
just going through your process, overcoming depression,
Mhm.
overcoming lack of clarity,
Yep.
even at the beginning of the year, like you've created so many shifts from the beginning of the year up until like
Yes.
there's so many shifts that already have happened. Um,
Yes.
but I say that because you really are a testament to doing the work, to trusting God, to
Yep.
cultivating deeper trust in yourself. Because one of the
Yep.
reasons that, or what I feel like is the main reason why people don't even consider investing in themselves, even if it's like a loan or a credit card or a finance option or getting a second job or whatever, it's usually because there's a lack of
Mhm.
trust if they're gonna make that purchase
Absolutely.
themselves.
Yep.
So a lot of what you've done is a testament to you cultivating a deeper trust in you. And
Yeah.
that for me as a coach, even outside of all the things that you've been able to do, like booking jobs, like working on your dance career, working
Yep.
on your business, like
Yep.
getting your graduate degrees, like
Yes.
all of those things, like those things are just an extension of the person that you are and became.
Yeah.
So, Bri,
Yeah.
last question for you. What are you now working on a personal development level? Not on a business level, but on a personal development.
Mm. It's actually great that you asked this question. On a personal development level, right now, because we're almost getting to the half year point, I'm actually reevaluating in real time. This is the week that I'm reevaluating. I'm getting clear on what showed up for me for the previous 6 years. I mean, 6 years, 6 months. Reevaluating what happened. How did I show up? What went well? What didn't go so well, etc. Um, and what I said I would do
Mm,
to what I said I would do, and seeing, okay, for the things that I said I would do that it didn't come to pass, why? What showed up for me, but also was it, in my will, or was it in God's will? Or was it on his, divine timing? And so personal development right now, I'm making a shift on saying, what do I need to actually become the person that I need to be with what God's promises for my life is. And so currently, on a personal development level, I'm shifting and thinking about, okay, what books do I want to read? What seminars do I want to attend to? So right now, I'm just personally reevaluating my goals and seeing, okay, are there certain conferences that I need to go to really develop my mindset? You know, there are certain things at this level where I'm like, okay, right now my confidence needs to go even higher. You know, clarity on, you know, what I bring to the table in this industry, like for example, for the dance world, what does that look like long term? Because I do want my own dance and movement private practice, but right now I have to kind of be in the industry already. And so it's like personally, how am I going to grow to be continue to step into what I'm called to do? And so right now it's getting clear on what does that look like, and now I'm integrating it, making sure that I'm integrating that more into the rest of the 6 months, if that makes sense.
Amazing.
Mhm.
Bri, I love you. So happy for you.
Me too.
So happy for you. All right, guys, that concludes our meeting today. Bri, you're amazing. You're amazing. Seriously, no words.
No, likewise.
Let me stop recording.